You've all heard stories. Funny stories, serious stories, even fish stories. But and you've heard a story today. You've heard a story from the plaintiff, and you'll hear another story from the defendant. Like all stories, there are two sides to the story. And you'll hear the second side of the story from Officer Waldman. I have the privilege and honor of representing Officer Waldman today. And ladies and gentlemen, as you hear both stories, I want you to try to focus on the facts. I want you to look beyond what's being said and try to discern what really happened on the night of December 7th, 1996. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to give you a little overview of what's about to take place here. This case will be placed under a telescope, so to speak, when we call witnesses to the stand and when they're examined and cross-examined. And when you hear testimony and you'll see different pieces of evidence and you may not get enough time to review that evidence, ladies and gentlemen, you may lose track or lose the perspective, lose focus of what's really happening, what's meaningful and what's not. So I'm going to give you a little overview. I'm going to take this case out from underneath the microscope for a moment and give you an overview. So the plaintiff has a story. You've heard a summary of his story. His story is that on December 7th, 1996, he went over to a friend's house to watch a basketball game. And he will testify that he had some beers at the game. They had a six-pack between him and his two friends. And they sat down and played some cards. Then they went out to a few bars. Had some scotch and water. 3 bars. 4 to 5 scotch and waters. And then they went to a ball field and ran some races. And after that, he decided to head home. And on his way home, that's when he encountered Officer Levy and Officer Waldman. Now, they were driving in an unmarked car. They did not have uniforms on. He did not know at that time that they were officers. And they were driving very slowly. They were driving about 5 to 10 miles per hour, is what he'll tell you. And he'll testify that he tried to pass them. They cut him off. Eventually, they turned onto a one-way street, and he followed them down the street. And then they pulled over. So he pulled over too, and got out of his car, and ran around his car and went over, and he'll testify that he was hit by Officer Levy, and that a struggle ensued, and that he was hit down and knocked to the ground, that Officer Levy's knee was placed into his chest, and that at that point, and not until then, did they identify themselves as police officers. And at that point he asked for ID and stopped fighting. He stopped fighting. He stopped. He said, show me some identification. I'm fine. I'll look. And as soon as he started to get up, at that moment, when he had stopped, he wasn't threatening any force at all. He was shot in the back by Officer Waldman. You'll also hear a story from the officers. Officer Waldman and Officer Levy will testify. And they'll tell their version of the story. Like I said, every story has two sides. And I want you to try to look beyond the stories. I want you to try to look for facts. Seek the truth. Think about what really happened. The officers are going to tell you a quite different story. They're going to testify that on the night of December 7th, 1996, the plaintiff did approach them from the back and was swerving and driving kind of wildly. And when they pulled over onto a one-way street, he followed and then cut them off, parked in front of them, got out of the car. And at that time, they identified themselves as police officers. They said, "Police, police." The plaintiff came around the car and attacked Officer Levy, who had announced himself as a police officer. A struggle ensued. They will tell you that when he got out of the car and attacked Officer Levy, he had a knife in his hand. A knife that he used to stab Officer Levy in the shoulder. Officer Waldman had gotten out of the car, and he will testify that he saw the plaintiff raise that knife up in the air and stab Officer Levy in the shoulder. He would testify that he came around the back of the car, watching closely what was happening, wondering, what can I do to help my partner? And as he saw that knife raise up again, and as he saw the plaintiff begin to bring that knife towards his partner, Officer Levy, again, then and only then, he decided to pull the trigger and shoot the plaintiff. These stories are very, very different. The facts seem different. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to focus on what's true. What really happened? Because facts are stubborn things, as John Adams told the jury when he defended the British soldiers in the Boston Massacre. Facts are stubborn things. Facts are not like stories. And today there are some things that are facts. There are some things that we can agree on, but that both parties agree on. One of those is that there was a cut wound. There is evidence that shows that Officer Levy was checked into the hospital and treated for a cut wound on his left shoulder. Another fact that is undisputed and supported by objective testimony by the police report was that there was a knife at the scene of the crime. You're going to hear a story from, you're going to hear the plaintiff try to explain inconsistencies in the officer's testimony. And there are some small inconsistencies about the timing of when the knife came out, about whether there were fingerprints or blood on the knife. The defendants will tell you, the officers will tell you that, will explain that there was possibly some mishandling with the knife. The knife was picked up by Sergeant Sloan and placed in an evidence bag and not marked at that time, thrown into the trunk of a car with other evidence, apparently a knife similar to it, and then the bag was taken out later and marked. That's a different story. You'll hear a story. You'll hear seemingly things that seem inconsistent. But look past that. Think about what really happened. Look for the facts. Look for the truth. We know, ladies and gentlemen, the testimony agrees that there was a cut on the shoulder of Officer Levy. All testimony agrees that there was a knife found at the scene of the crime. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear the stories. Listen to the stories. Look for the facts. Find the truth. I believe that when you look at the evidence presented today, you will see that Officer Waldman, his conduct under the circumstances was reasonable. That he shot his gun not with an intent to harm, but with intent to save. My heart goes out to the plaintiff, Mr. Ramirez. He's suffered severe injuries. I sympathize with him. But Officer Waldman's conduct was reasonable. Thank you. How's that done?